April 29, 1942, Union Station, Los Angeles, California. Treasury Department Liaison Officer Captain Malcolm Pierce stood on Platform 12, clipboard in hand, watching the impossible become real. 16 gleaming passenger cars stretched before him, each one bearing a small brass plate, Victory Caravan Special. In 45 minutes, this train would depart carrying the most valuable cargo ever assembled on American rails. Not gold, not weapons, but something far more powerful in this moment of national crisis, the combined star power of Hollywood's elite. This cannot possibly work, Pierce thought, scanning the manifest again. We're asking America's royalty to become traveling salesmen. The logistics were staggering. 73 performers, musicians, and crew. A custom-configured train requiring 16 cars. 8 sleepers, 2 diners, 3 baggage cars for costumes and equipment, 1 generator car, and 2 coaches for press and Treasury officials. The Southern Pacific Railroad had donated the entire consist. Every studio had loaned their biggest stars without compensation. The performers themselves had volunteered for a schedule that would make a campaign general blanch. 21 days, 13 major cities, over 10,000 miles, multiple performances daily. Pierce checked his watch. 8:47 a.m. In 13 minutes, Bing Crosby would board Car 3, Cary Grant, Car 5, Olivia de Havilland, Car 7. The roster read like a fantasy. Bob Hope, James Cagney, Claudette Colbert, Groucho Marx, Joan Blondell, Charles Boyer, Joan Bennett, Rhys Stevens, Merle Oberon, Pat O'Brien, Frank McHugh, Burt Lahr, Charlotte Greenwood, Desi Arnaz. Behind them would come orchestras, choreographers, stage managers, and a small army of Treasury officials armed with bond pledge forms. The mission was brutally simple. Convert American admiration into American dollars. The war machine demanded $60 billion in 1942 alone. Traditional methods, bank drives, poster campaigns, radio appeals were failing to generate sufficient velocity of capital. Treasury Secretary Henry Morgenthau, Jr. had gambled everything on this single audacious theory. If citizens could see their heroes working, sweating, and sacrificing for victory, they would open their wallets not from duty, but from inspiration. Pierce heard the commotion before he saw them. The first stars arriving through the station's eastern entrance, mobbed immediately by early morning crowds. The experiment was beginning. The journey to this unprecedented mobilization had begun 4 months earlier, in the desperate weeks following Pearl Harbor. On December 8, 1941, barely 12 hours after Congress declared war, Treasury Secretary Morgenthau convened an emergency meeting in Washington. The arithmetic was terrifying. America would need to spend approximately $100 million per day to wage global war. Tax revenue would cover perhaps half that sum. The remainder had to come from war bonds, governed loans sold to ordinary citizens promising repayment with interest after victory. But selling bonds to a nation still traumatized by the Great Depression required more than patriotic appeals. It required theater. Enter the Hollywood Victory Committee, formed on December 15, 1941, at a meeting of studio heads, agents, and stars held at the Beverly Hills Hotel. The entertainment industry offered its complete cooperation. Every major talent agency pledged to release performers for war-related activities. Every studio agreed to donate facilities, equipment, and personnel. The committee's chairman, actor Clark Gable, issued a statement. The motion picture industry has only one purpose now: winning the war. Treasury officials proposed the caravan concept in February 1942. The plan was revolutionary. Assemble the biggest stars available,
put them on a train, and send them on a marathon tour of major American cities. Not to military bases, the USO would handle troop entertainment, but to civilian population centers where war bonds were purchased. Each stop would feature multiple performances: morning rallies in public squares, afternoon shows in civic auditoriums, evening galas at major theaters. Between performances, stars would attend luncheons with local business leaders, visit defense plants, and, most critically, sell bonds directly to citizens in impromptu street corner pitches. The Hollywood Victory Committee embraced the concept with modifications. They insisted on top-tier talent, no B-listers, no has-beens. The train would carry genuine stars at their commercial peak. Second, they demanded complete creative control over performances. Treasury could handle the bond sales machinery, but Hollywood would produce the shows. Third, every participant would travel together for the entire tour. No special accommodations, no early departures. If they were asking America to sacrifice, Hollywood would demonstrate shared sacrifice. By late March, contracts were being signed. Studios reshuffled production schedules. Films were delayed. Projects were postponed. On March 28, 1942, The Hollywood Reporter ran the headline, "70 stars to board bond train. Biggest talent package ever assembled rolls out April 29." The route was calculated for maximum economic impact. Washington, D.C. would be first, a symbolic kickoff in the capital. Then Boston, headquarters of New England manufacturing. Philadelphia and its shipyards. Cleveland's steel mills. Chicago's financial district. Minneapolis grain exchanges. Dallas oil wealth. The tour would hit every major population center between Los Angeles and the East Coast, targeting the industrial and financial hearts of American war production. Training began April 15th. Treasury officials briefed performers on bond mechanics, sales techniques, and the economic realities of war finance. The stars learned to explain the difference between Series E bonds, $18.75 for a $25 bond maturing in 10 years, and larger denominations. They practiced translating dollars into weapons. $25 bought a soldier's rifle. $375 bought a motorcycle. $1,900 bought a Jeep. $150,000 bought a fighter plane. $15 million bought a destroyer. On April 28th, one day before departure, a dress rehearsal was held at the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles. 2,000 defense workers attended. The show ran 2 hours. Musical numbers, comedy sketches, dramatic readings, and between each act, bond pitches. The rehearsal audience pledged $47,000 in bonds. Treasury officials were ecstatic. If they could generate that response per performance and deliver multiple performances daily across major cities, the tour might raise hundreds of millions. The mathematics of hope were deceptively simple. The reality would prove far more punishing. The Victory Caravan Special departed Los Angeles at 9:15 a.m. on April 29, 1942, to the cheers of 15,000 citizens who packed Union Station's platforms and surrounding streets. Film cameras rolled. Newsreel crews captured every moment. The train's departure made front-page news nationwide. America's most glamorous citizens were going to war on the Homefront. The pattern of exhaustion began immediately. The train traveled non-stop to Washington, D.C., arriving May 1 after a 39-hour journey. The stars emerged sleep-deprived but smiling to face a packed schedule. At 2 p.m., they performed at the Watergate concert shell for 18,000 people. Treasury Secretary Morgenthau himself appeared on stage to announce, "Every dollar you pledge today buys a bullet for a Nazi." The audience pledged $1.2 million in bonds within 90 minutes. At 7:30 p.m., a second performance at Constitution Hall drew 4,000 more attendees and another $800,000 in pledges. Between shows, stars scattered across Washington on individual bond-selling missions. Bing Crosby sang impromptu songs on the Capitol steps, signing bond pledge forms between verses. Cary Grant toured the Navy Department, charming admirals and secretaries alike into purchases. Groucho Marx performed comedy routines in Lafayette Square, drawing crowds that Treasury officials harvested for sales. By midnight, the Washington stop had generated $2.8 million in pledges, exceeding all projections. Boston followed on May 3rd. The exhaustion deepened. The train arrived at 6 a.m. The stars were on stage at Boston Common by 10 a.m. before 40,000 people. The afternoon show at Symphony Hall packed 3,000 inside, with another 5,000 listening via loudspeakers outside. Bob Hope's opening joke, "I'm so tired I forgot what city this is. Someone tell me so I can pretend I'm happy to be here." The crowd roared. They also pledged $3.1 million. Philadelphia on May 5 brought the tour's first serious test. The schedule called for 4 performances in a single day: morning at Independence Hall, noon at a defense plant, afternoon at the Academy of Music, evening at Convention Hall. Actress Joan Bennett collapsed from exhaustion after the second show and was forced to skip the evening performance. Medical staff traveling with the caravan treated her for dehydration and nervous fatigue. Yet Philadelphia pledged $4.2 million, the tour's highest single-city total thus far. Cleveland on May 8th demonstrated the caravan's expanding impact. The morning rally at Public Square drew an estimated 75,000 people, the largest crowd yet. Traffic stopped. Police struggled to maintain order. Stars literally couldn't reach the stage through the throng and had to be escorted by mounted officers. The afternoon performance at Public Auditorium sold out in 47 minutes. Cleveland pledged $5.7 million. But the human cost mounted. Claudette Colbert developed severe laryngitis and couldn't speak for 2 days. Desi Arnaz's orchestra played 4 shows in 18 hours, their instruments barely staying in tune. The genius of the caravan lay not in any single performance, but in the cumulative psychological impact. In Chicago on May 11, Treasury official Raymond Daniels explained the strategy to local press. When a citizen sees Cary Grant in person, selling bonds on a street corner at 7 a.m., something shifts in their understanding of the war. These are the most pampered, highly paid people in America. If they're willing to endure this schedule, ordinary citizens feel compelled to match that sacrifice. The bond is their way to participate. Chicago proved Daniels correct. Over 3 days, May 11 to 13, the caravan performed 8 times across the city. The finale at Soldier Field drew 90,000 attendees, the largest audience of the entire tour. Chicago's total bond pledges, $8.9 million. The Chicago Tribune headline read, "Hollywood's sacrifice inspires city's generosity." But exhaustion was becoming crisis. By Minneapolis on May 15, multiple performers were taking amphetamines to maintain energy. Stage managers had to wake stars 2 hours before performances for makeup and vocal warm-ups. The glamour had evaporated entirely. Olivia de Havilland later recalled, "We were zombies. We smiled, we performed, we sold bonds, but we were operating on pure will. I remember nothing of several entire cities, just getting on the stage, doing the show, and collapsing back onto the train. The pattern was established. Arrival at dawn, performances until midnight, collapse, repeat. City after city, show after show. And everywhere, the bond totals climbed higher."
But by mid-tour, the tactical picture began to change. The caravan's success had created its own crisis. The stars were breaking, and 13 cities remained. The crisis point came in St. Louis on May 17, 1942. At 3:30 p.m., during the afternoon performance at Kiel Auditorium, comedian Bert Lahr simply stopped mid-routine, walked off stage, and refused to continue. Witnesses reported him shouting backstage, "I can't do this anymore. We're killing ourselves for applause." Stage managers scrambled. Groucho Marx filled the gap with improvised comedy, while organizers convinced Lahr to return. He did, 15 minutes later, apologizing to the audience and finishing the show. But the incident shook the entire company. That evening, a meeting was convened in the train's dining car. Treasury officials faced a near mutiny. Claudette Colbert's throat specialist declared she needed complete vocal rest for 72 hours. Joan Bennett was still recovering from Philadelphia. Half the orchestra reported severe fatigue. The tour medical officer, Dr. Samuel Klein, issued a warning. If we maintain this pace, someone will require hospitalization, possibly multiple people. The revelation came from Bing Crosby, the caravan's unofficial leader. He proposed a radical modification. Reduce the number of daily performances from 4 to 2. Extend rest periods between cities from 6 hours to 12. And allow performers to rotate out of certain appearances based on health status. Treasury officials initially resisted. Fewer shows meant fewer bond sales. But Crosby's counterargument was devastating. If we keep going like this, the entire tour collapses. Better to complete the schedule with reduced performances than abandon the tour in Indianapolis. The negotiation lasted 3 hours. Eventually, Treasury agreed to a modified schedule for the remaining cities, with one critical condition. The final performance in Dallas must be the tour's grandest show, with every performer present and healthy, to end the caravan on a triumphant note. The changes took effect immediately. Des Moines on May 19th featured only 2 performances instead of 4. The stars received 14 hours of rest between shows. The impact on morale was immediate. James Cagney told reporters, "We can breathe again. This is still brutal, but it's survivable." Des Moines pledged $2.1 million, less than previous cities, but Treasury officials accepted the trade-off. Yet the revised schedule revealed a deeper truth about the caravan's effectiveness. In Kansas City on May 21, with only morning and evening shows, star performers had free afternoon hours. Rather than resting, many voluntarily walked the streets, stopping in shops and offices to sell bonds one-on-one. Cary Grant entered a hardware store and sold $15,000 in bonds to the owner and his customers in 30 minutes. Olivia de Havilland visited a hospital ward and convinced a wounded sailor's entire family to purchase bonds totaling $3,000. These unscripted, intimate encounters proved astonishingly effective. Treasury officials realized the caravan's true power wasn't the mass rallies, it was the personal contact. A citizen who shook Bing Crosby's hand and bought a bond directly from him wasn't making a financial transaction. They were forging a personal connection to the war effort. The bond became a tangible link between their contribution and victory. The human element transformed in other ways. In Omaha on May 23rd, Bob Hope's comedy routine included a bit about the tour's exhaustion. "We've been on this train so long, Cary Grant is starting to look attractive to me, and I'm not even British." The self-deprecating humor resonated. Audiences saw their heroes as human, fallible, suffering, and still serving. It made their own sacrifices seem achievable. The modified schedule allowed for another critical innovation: targeted appearances at defense installations. In Tulsa on May 25, the entire company toured an aircraft assembly plant, signing autographs and posing for photographs with workers. The plant's bond enrollment, the percentage of workers with automatic payroll deductions for bond purchases, increased from 47% to 78% within a week. The presence of celebrities made bond ownership a mark of patriotic status. By late May, as the caravan approached its final stops, the tour had fundamentally transformed American bond selling strategy. Treasury officials had learned that celebrity wasn't just a sales tool. It was a weapon that converted abstract patriotism into concrete financial commitment. The lesson would shape war.
The Hollywood Victory Caravan structure had originated not in Hollywood or Washington, but in a series of emergency Treasury Department meetings held in January 1942. The requirements issued by Secretary Morgenthau's office were specific and, on examination, nearly impossible to satisfy simultaneously. Generate minimum $100 million in bond pledges across the tour. Maintain public enthusiasm for 3 weeks without repetition or staleness. Demonstrate shared sacrifice by America's wealthiest citizens. Cover geographic scope from East Coast to West Coast. Deliver consistent messaging across all cities. Complete the mission without casualties. No performer hospitalizations, no train accidents, no publicity disasters. These specifications emerged from a strategic calculation by Morgenthau and his war finance director, John W. Haynes. America's bond-selling infrastructure in early 1942 was failing catastrophically. Traditional bank-based campaigns were generating only 40% of projected revenue. Radio appeals had become white noise. Citizens heard them constantly and ignored them consistently. Poster campaigns saturated visual space without moving dollars. The Treasury needed a new weapon, one that could break through public numbness and convert passive support into active financial participation. Into this planning process came Hollywood Victory Committee Chairman Clark Gable and his organizational team. Gable understood something Treasury officials initially missed. Celebrity had become America's most valuable renewable resource. In 1942, movies were the dominant mass entertainment medium. The average American attended a movie theater weekly. Film stars were not just famous, they were intimately known. Audiences had spent hours studying their faces, voices, mannerisms. They felt personal relationships with people they'd never met. The impossible choice facing the caravan's designers was this: create a tour that maximized celebrity contact with citizens while minimizing physical and psychological damage to the performers themselves. Every additional performance increased bond totals, but compounded exhaustion. Every city added to the route expanded geographic coverage, but lengthened time away from studios and families. Every publicity appearance multiplied the tour's impact, but eroded rest periods. The mathematics were brutally simple. To generate $100 million in pledges, assuming an average pledge of $500 per attendee, mixing small individual bonds with large corporate purchases, the tour required 200,000 citizens to attend performances and pledge bonds. To reach 200,000 people across 13 cities meant approximately 15,000 attendees per city. To accommodate 15,000 people required multiple performances, as no single venue could hold such crowds. Multiple performances demanded longer stays per city or reduced rest time. The entire calculation depended on stars maintaining energy, enthusiasm, and health. The designers chose to prioritize mission completion over performer comfort. The original schedule called for 21 days, 4 performances daily, minimal rest between cities. They justified this punishing structure through several assumptions. Performers were young and healthy, average age 38. They possessed extraordinary drive and discipline from professional demands. They understood the war's urgency, and they would endure temporary hardship for permanent glory. What the designers underestimated was the cumulative weight of psychological pressure. Physical exhaustion could be managed with medical support, but the emotional burden of representing America's morale, of meeting thousands of desperate citizens who saw the stars as symbols of national hope, of maintaining perfect public composure while privately collapsing, this proved far more destructive than anyone anticipated. Treasury Logistics Director William H. Edwards later explained the decision-making. "We knew the schedule was brutal. We knew performers would suffer. But we believed, correctly it turned out, that they would endure because the alternative was unthinkable. If Hollywood refused to sacrifice comfort for victory, what message would that send to soldiers dying overseas?" The caravan worked precisely because it hurt. The suffering was visible, and citizens responded to visible sacrifice. This philosophy, prioritize mission success, accept human cost, would define the caravan's entire execution. And it would generate precisely the results Treasury desired at precisely the price Hollywood paid.
The systematic toll of the caravan's relentless schedule manifested across the tour's final week in forms both measurable and invisible. The mathematics of attrition were precise and unforgiving. Dallas, the final stop, was scheduled for May 28–29, 1942. The city demanded the tour's most ambitious program, 6 performances over 2 days, culminating in a massive outdoor rally at Fair Park. Treasury officials projected that Dallas, with its concentration of oil wealth and defense industries, could generate $10 million in pledges, enough to push the tour over $100 million total. But delivering that result required every performer to appear healthy, energetic, and enthusiastic despite 3 weeks of continuous performance. The reality was catastrophic. By the time the Victory Caravan Special pulled into Dallas Union Station at 6:45 a.m. on May 28th, the medical officer's log documented extensive damage. Claudette Colbert, chronic laryngitis, lost 8 pounds. Joan Bennett, severe exhaustion, intermittent fever. Bert Lahr, stress-induced digestive problems. Rise Stevens, strained vocal cords. Desi Arnaz, pneumonia symptoms, refusing treatment. 15 performers were taking prescription medications for fatigue, anxiety, or physical ailments. The train's medical supplies, initially stocked for minor first aid, had been restocked twice. Yet they performed. The morning show at Fair Park drew 42,000 attendees. Bing Crosby opened with a song, his voice hoarse but functional. Bob Hope delivered jokes written that morning by writers traveling with the tour, adapting material to Dallas references. Cary Grant spoke directly about the war's financial needs. His famous charm deployed now not for romance, but for fiscal responsibility. Every dollar you pledge today becomes a bullet fired at tyranny. Every bond you purchase brings our boys home faster. Between shows, the fractures showed. Groucho Marx was discovered sleeping in a janitor's closet at the performance venue, having collapsed from exhaustion. Charlotte Greenwood wept openly backstage, telling stage managers, "I have nothing left. I'm empty." Multiple performers required oxygen administration between appearances. The tour's publicist, Helen Ferguson, later recalled, "Dallas broke us. We completed the mission, but we were shattered doing it." The afternoon show at the Majestic Theater was barely functional. Several performers forgot lyrics, missed cues, or delivered lines with visible strain. Yet the audience, aware of the caravan's 3-week ordeal, responded with standing ovations. Citizens pledged bonds not because the performances were polished, but because the performers' suffering was authentic. Treasury official Raymond Daniels observed,
We were witnessing the power of shared sacrifice. The audience wasn't buying entertainment. They were honoring endurance. The final rally on May 29th at the Cotton Bowl drew an estimated 65,000 people, the second largest crowd of the entire tour. By this point, the performers had developed a dark humor about their condition. Bob Hope's closing joke, "We've been on this tour so long, the war might be over before we get home." The audience laughed. They also pledged $11.2 million, exceeding Dallas targets by 12%. The tour's final accounting revealed the human price. Of 73 performers who departed Los Angeles on April 29, 68 completed the full tour. 5 had been forced to leave early due to health emergencies. 27 required medical treatment during the tour beyond routine care. Every performer lost weight. The average was 6 pounds, with some losing as much as 12. Multiple performers developed chronic health issues that persisted for months: vocal damage, exhaustion-related illnesses, stress disorders. But the financial results vindicated the suffering. The Hollywood Victory Caravan generated $121.7 million in bond pledges across its 21-day tour. Treasury officials calculated that the tour directly influenced an additional $50 million nationwide from citizens inspired by news coverage. The total economic impact exceeded $170 million, equivalent to approximately $3 billion in 2024 dollars. The tour had raised enough to build 12 aircraft carriers, 30 destroyers, or 500 B-17 bombers. The broader consequences extended beyond dollars. The caravan established a template for celebrity involvement in war financing that would be replicated throughout the conflict. Individual stars would conduct smaller tours. Studios would produce bond-selling short films. Radio programs would feature regular bond appeals by famous voices. The principle was proven. Celebrity could be weaponized for fiscal mobilization.
Yet the psychological cost to the performers remained largely hidden. Most refused to discuss the tour's hardships publicly, aware that complaining about exhaustion while soldiers died overseas would invite deserved criticism. Privately, the complete production statistics of the Hollywood Victory Caravan reveal the scope of what was accomplished and what was sacrificed. Participants: 73 total, comprising 52 performers, actors, singers, comedians, 18 musicians, and 3 stage crew members. Of the 52 performers, 31 were under contract to major studios, earning an average of $175,000 annually, approximately $3.2 million in 2024 dollars. They donated 21 days of time, collectively 1,533 person days of foregone income. The economic value of donated time exceeded $9 million. Tour specifications: 13 cities visited, 49 performances delivered. Original plan called for 84. Modified schedule reduced the total. 10,247 miles traveled by rail. 312,000 estimated total attendance across all performances. $121.7 million in direct bond pledges attributed to the tour. Average pledge per performance, $2.5 million. Highest single performance pledge total, $5.7 million, Chicago Soldier Field Rally. Lowest single performance total, $890,000, Des Moines Evening Show, May 19. Medical statistics: 27 performers required treatment beyond routine care. 5 performers departed tour early due to health emergencies. 68 completed full tour. 0 hospitalizations, barely. 12 performers required prescription medications for stress-related conditions. 8 performers developed chronic issues requiring post-tour medical care, vocal damage, exhaustion disorders, stress-related illnesses. The distribution of bond pledge sources revealed the caravan's true power. Approximately 45% of pledges came from individual citizens purchasing Series E bonds, $18.75 to $1,000 denominations. Another 35% came from corporations purchasing larger denominations, $5,000 to $100,000. The remaining 20% came from municipal governments and civic organizations. The individual citizen component was critical. It represented genuine mass mobilization, not just institutional investment. Loss rates, in a conventional military sense, were inapplicable. No one died. But the casualty rate, defined as participants unable to complete the mission or requiring medical intervention, was 43%. This exceeded casualty rates for many combat operations. The caravan was, in effect, a sustained campaign that ground down its forces through attrition of exhaustion rather than enemy fire. Survivor testimony varied. Bing Crosby, reflecting years later, "It was worth it. We raised real money that built real weapons. That's more than most civilians ever contribute to a war." Claudette Colbert was more ambiguous. "I'm proud we did it. I'm glad it's over. I wouldn't do it again." Olivia de Havilland was bluntest. "They used us. We let them. Both things are true." The comparative analysis illuminates the caravan's effectiveness relative to other bond-selling methods. Traditional bank campaigns in spring 1942 generated approximately $30 million per month nationwide. Radio appeals added another $15 million monthly. The caravan's $121.7 million in 3 weeks exceeded 4 months of conventional fundraising. The cost per dollar raised, including all logistics, train rental, publicity, and medical expenses, was approximately 0.03 cents. Bank campaigns cost 0.08 cents per dollar raised. The caravan was nearly 3 times more efficient. But efficiency calculations omitted the human factor. Bank employees sold bonds during normal business hours for regular salaries. Caravan performers worked 18-hour days for no compensation while sacrificing their health. The philosophical difference was stark. Treasury had weaponized celebrity by converting fame into fiscal obligation. The American approach to Homefront mobilization differed fundamentally from Axis strategies. Germany relied primarily on war taxation and confiscation. Japan used forced savings programs. Both methods generated revenue but created resentment. America chose voluntary participation incentivized by celebrity influence. Citizens purchased bonds not from compulsion but from inspiration. The financial result was similar, billions raised, but the social impact differed profoundly. American citizens felt they were partners in victory, not subjects of extraction. Which approach succeeded? By war's end, American war bond sales totaled $185.7 billion, approximately 60% of total war costs. The Hollywood Victory Caravan contributed 0.07% of that total directly, but its propaganda value was incalculable. It established that celebrity service inspired citizen sacrifice. That principle powered thousands of subsequent campaigns, each building on the caravan's foundation. The final numbers told a simple story. 73 people, 21 days, 49 performances, $121.7 million. Behind those numbers lay exhaustion, pain, pride, and the transformation of entertainment into ammunition.
The examination of the Hollywood Victory Caravan's impact extends far beyond its immediate financial results. When that 16-car train pulled back into Los Angeles on May 31, 1942, it carried more than exhausted performers. It carried proof that celebrity could be deployed as a strategic asset in total war. The connection between the caravan and final victory requires careful measurement. Did those $121.7 million in bonds materially affect the war's outcome? Directly? Modestly. The sum funded approximately 1.2% of American military spending in 1942. But indirectly, profoundly, the caravan established the template for mass celebrity mobilization that would persist through 1945. Between 1942 and 1945, Hollywood stars participated in over 300 separate bond tours, rallies, and campaigns, collectively raising an estimated $2.1 billion. The caravan was the pilot program that proved the concept's viability. The final irony lies in what the caravan revealed about American society in 1942. The nation's most pampered, privileged, and protected citizens volunteered for a mission that broke their bodies and exhausted their spirits. They did so not because they faced punishment for refusal, but because refusal was culturally unthinkable. In that single fact lies the essence of why America won the war. Total mobilization meant everyone, even the most famous, served in some capacity. The lesson extends beyond military history into the psychology of mass persuasion. The caravan succeeded because it transformed abstract patriotism into concrete personal connection. A citizen who met Cary Grant and purchased a bond from him wasn't buying a financial instrument. They were joining a crusade led by heroes. The bond became a totem of participation in a national epic. Treasury officials had weaponized not just celebrity, but the human need to belong to something larger than oneself. Broader implications. The caravan demonstrated that in modern warfare, every asset, including cultural capital, must be mobilized for victory. The entertainment industry was not peripheral to the war effort. It was central to financing, morale, and social cohesion. This understanding would shape American military-industrial cultural integration for the remainder of the 20th century. The final judgment must be clear-eyed. The Hollywood Victory Caravan exploited its participants, extracting maximum service for maximum gain. Those who designed the tour knew the schedule was punishing and implemented it anyway. Yet the performers volunteered willingly, understanding the stakes. Both exploitation and willing sacrifice can coexist. The caravan was both, and it worked. When Captain Malcolm Pierce filed his final report to the Treasury Department on June 15, 1942, he concluded with a paragraph that captured the entire mission's meaning. The Victory Caravan proved that American celebrity, properly deployed, generates measurable fiscal mobilization. The cost to participants was severe, but acceptable. Recommend expansion of program with modified schedules to prevent medical casualties. The weapon works. We should continue using it. The weapon did continue. For 3 more years, through countless tours and campaigns, Hollywood served the war effort. But the 1942 Victory Caravan remained unique. The first and most brutal deployment of celebrity as ammunition. The moment when America's royalty became America's soldiers on the home front, and proof that in total war, even fame was a resource to be consumed in pursuit of victory.